Hi, this is Joe Welinske from the ConveyUX conference. I'm program manager, and our event is coming up in January in Seattle. And I'm talking with some of the many presenters who will be involved in the event. And so, right now, I am connected up with Marli Mesibov. Hello, Marli.
Hello.
Where are you speaking to us from today?
I'm
Oh,
in Boston, Massachusetts.
oh, you're in Boston. All right, great. I'm in the Seattle area, and I thought we could just start with you telling us a little bit about the types of work that you're involved in.
Sure. I work with a combination of enterprise companies and startups. I work as a consultant both in content strategy and user experience. And most of the companies that I'm working with are either trying to figure out who their audience is, or if they're lucky enough to have a good deal of information about that audience, then they want to know how they can communicate with them and how they can create really delightful experiences.
And so, how does that tend to manifest itself on a day-to-day basis for Marley?
It usually starts off with somebody coming to me and saying, I don't quite understand what you do, but I have a problem and I've been told that you might be able to help me solve it. And then at that point we start digging in and we look at what are the challenges you're having, what's keeping you up at night. And if we can isolate what that is, then usually the solution comes in some combination of user research and creating a content strategy, whether that means creating guidelines that are consistent across the entire organization or educating the organization as to who their clients and their audience really is.
Well, you kind of got into another thing I wanted to ask you about related to content strategy, which is that it means different things to different people, and
Yes.
so with respect to your own domain thing, the way that you practice, what are the types of activities that you get involved with?
Sure. I see content strategy as essentially, I don't want to say the same, but it's a parallel track to user experience. Content strategists, we're creating experiences as well, but we're creating experiences with a focus on all of those touch points and what content is necessary and usable and helpful to the user as they go along their journey and through their experience. So for me, that means creating taxonomies, doing content audits, creating brand guidelines, voice and tone guidelines, and really just looking at what the experience is, creating a user flow the same way the UX designer would, and then saying, now on top of that, who are we speaking to and how are we going to speak to them?
Well, what are some of the in the projects you've worked on recently? What are some of the challenges that you've run into? Have there been any unique situations or and solutions that have come out of that?
You know, there's one challenge that is coming up quite a bit that I think content strategists, certainly across the United States and probably around the world, are starting to deal with. And that's that we sit in this interesting gray area right now. People know that content strategy is a thing. 5 years ago, we were fighting to be heard. We were fighting to have stakeholders recognize content strategy. Every other talk that you saw at a conference, if it was about content strategy, it was how do we sell it to the business? How do we teach people the importance? And now people know it's important, it's a thing, but that doesn't mean that they understand how to do it. And more importantly, we have a lot of stakeholders who will say, content strategy is important, make sure you do that. And then when a content strategist comes in and says, great, let's look at the process and let's look at the user flow, they say, whoa, 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 whoa. I just wanted you to fix the content strategy. And that's a really interesting spot and a really interesting challenge to be attacking right now, saying, okay, people know that content strategy is important. Now, how do we help them to understand that the solution to that problem is more than just a tiny little change? It actually can be a complete overhaul sometimes, but it's going to end up for the better. Or sometimes it just means shifting things around, but it can't stay isolated. You can't fix content strategy in a vacuum.
In, in terms of talking about content, how much of it what kind of issues do you run into in terms of understanding or dealing with the capabilities of your clients to then uh, uh, turn that phrase of content into something that's actually effective, good communication through whether it's through wordsmithing or image development or just frameworks for presenting and communication. How do you identify what's key so that there actually is communication after the content strategy?
Well, what you're getting at is really the heart of creating a content strategy. And it's also what makes it such a fun field to work in. How to make that work for a client, how to deal with their specific capabilities, that's the fun part. That's why we're not just, as a consultant in particular, I'm not just responsible for learning about the end user. I'm responsible about learning about the stakeholders, the worker bees, the people who are actually going to be creating this content day in and day out. And what systems are they using? What technologies do they have? What are their strengths? Because we need to create a strategy that not only touches all the right points for the user, but is doable. It's no use creating a strategy if it can't be done, right? So what we're doing there is we're saying, okay, what are your strengths? What can we play to? What can we create that will build off of what you're already doing well and teach you to use that to make the experiences that you're building even better?
Well, for your session that you have set up for ConveyUX, that's titled "Finding Role Clarity in UX Chaos." So, how'd you come across that title, the theme of the talk? What brought you to wanting to talk to people about this topic?
I mentioned earlier that you can't create a content strategy in a vacuum. You can't fix what's any problem in a user experience while totally isolated. And that's what brought me to this topic, honestly, was exploring that challenge and exploring that problem that's coming up so often. We're hearing a lot lately. It's very popular to talk about silos and how awful they are. But I have a theory, and I've seen enough to believe that it's being proven true, that silos aren't created out of any kind of malicious intent, and they're not created out of fear, and they're not created out of any interest in being isolated. Silos seem to pop up when you've got a number of people who have a very specialized skill set. And the more that they learn about that skill set, the more that they sort of wrap themselves in this particular area that they work with, this particular thing that they do. And that's what ends up building that silo, is that you get so entrenched in the thing that you're really good at, be it content strategy or design or shoe sales. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you know so well, as a result, you end up not learning as much about everything else. And that's okay. But that means that if we're going to get out of those silos, we need to build windows or bridges to the other silos and make use of those other specializations. And that's really what brought me to this topic. When we talk about UX chaos, what we're talking about is we've got all these people with all these different specializations, and they're all calling themselves by the same 2 or 3 titles. They're all calling themselves UX designers or UX unicorns or content strategists or IAs. And I'm sure there are some roles out there that I'm missing. There are probably 15 different roles that all have a little bit of overlap, and they all have to do with UX, but they're all also specializations in their own rights. And we don't have very clear titles. There's no one specialty that maps up to one specific title yet. And so as a result, we've got what I'm seeing as sort of this chaos. And as soon as people try to move away and specialize in something, they're building up these silos. And I don't know if this sounds confusing yet, but it is. It's a mess. So what I've taken to doing is I've been looking at, all right, well, what can we do internally? What can we do to solve this? We're not going to solve it by just deciding this is today's definition. Everybody's already been doing that, and it's not helping. What we have to do instead is we need to listen, and we need to essentially act as an information architect. We need to start breaking out what are the tasks that we're doing, why are we associating it? Why am I personally associating it with this job role or with that job title? And more importantly, what am I trying to accomplish and what are my goals? And how does that map to my specific skill set?
All right. Well, I think it'll be a really interesting presentation. I'm looking forward to hearing it and meeting you when you make your visit to Seattle. So thanks for
I'm
taking the
very
time for
excited.
this. Yeah, thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you here in a couple of months.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to ConveyUX.
All right. Thanks a lot, Marley.
Bye bye.